Iran's regional network may see Israel's internal divisions as an opening to exploit, using online influence, psychological pressure, and coordinated threats to weaken public confidence and political cohesion. This may be the moment Iran's proxies have been waiting for. Hamas and Hezbollah have suffered major losses, while the Houthis remain the most active Iran-aligned force still launching attacks toward Israel. Netanyahu faces intense pressure from divisions within his own government and the unresolved Gaza war. Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis could try to exploit that strain. Israel is expanding incentives for reservists as the military continues to rely heavily on its reserve force. Netanyahu's multi-front war is putting the IDF under severe pressure. Are Iran and its proxies quietly breaking Netanyahu's forces? The new program offers discounted housing and land as an incentive for eligible reservists. Israel has announced a new housing program for military reservists amid continued demand on its reserve forces. The scheme will provide discounted housing and land to eligible personnel. The government plans to offer around 20,000 discounted housing opportunities to reservists. The program includes both apartments and residential land plots. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Housing Minister Chaim Katz, and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich have backed the program. The ministers said the initiative is aimed at supporting military reservists. The program is expected to provide 16,000 apartments and 4,000 ground-level housing plots. Eligible reservists will receive priority access to the available properties. Qualifying reservists could receive housing discounts of more than $167,000. The final benefit will depend on the property and eligibility criteria. The housing opportunities are expected to be rolled out during 2026 and 2027. The program will be implemented through government housing schemes. The announcement followed strong demand from reservists in the latest discounted housing lottery. The previous lottery highlighted the scale of interest among eligible personnel. A total of 25,354 reservists registered for the latest housing lottery. Of those applicants, 4,734 were selected to receive apartments. Reservists will receive priority access to 75% of the apartments under the new program. The allocation gives military reservists a larger share of the available housing. The program further expands existing government housing preferences for military reservists. The new scheme adds more discounted housing opportunities for eligible personnel. Israel's Knesset has passed a legislation extending mandatory military service for male soldiers to 32 months, as the country seeks to address growing manpower challenges faced by the Israel Defense Forces amid ongoing security pressures. The bill was approved with 43 lawmakers voting in favor, 12 voting against, and 1 member abstaining, marking a significant decision on the future length of compulsory service for Israeli men. The move comes as the Israeli military continues to face severe manpower shortages after years of fighting on multiple fronts, increasing the demand for additional personnel across active and reserve forces. The Israeli military had previously urged the government to restore mandatory service to 36 months, arguing that a longer service period was necessary to maintain operational readiness. The IDF has said it requires more troops to reduce the strain placed on both regular military units and reserve forces that have been repeatedly called up during prolonged periods of conflict. Male soldiers in Israel previously served 36 months before the mandatory period was reduced to 32 months in 2015 as part of earlier policy changes. The service requirement was later shortened again, reportedly dropping to 30 months in 2020 as Israel adjusted its military manpower policies. Although officials later approved extending the service period back to 32 months, the implementation of that change was delayed before the latest legislation was passed. During the ongoing war, the mandatory service period automatically reverted to 30 months in August 2024, creating additional concerns within the military over future troop availability. The first group of soldiers affected by the shorter service requirement was expected to complete their military duty in January 2027, raising fears of a significant reduction in available personnel. The Israeli military warned that the reduced service period could have resulted in a major troop shortfall, making it more difficult to sustain military operations and meet security demands. Under the newly approved legislation, the mandatory service period will remain at 32 months until June 2029, providing the military with a more stable supply of personnel over the coming years. The IDF estimates that it needs approximately 12,000 additional recruits to meet current operational requirements and strengthen its forces. That figure includes around 7,000 additional combat soldiers who would be needed to reinforce frontline units and maintain Israel's military capabilities. The extension of mandatory service is intended to ease pressure on Israel's military manpower system and provide greater support for forces operating under continued security challenges. IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zami announced that the Israeli military plans to further increase opportunities for female soldiers in frontline and combat assignments in a push to strengthen the army's operational capabilities. The announcement followed warnings from several rabbis who said they may discourage students from joining tank units if changes to mixed-gender service continue, intensifying debate within religious communities. The controversy focuses on an ongoing pilot initiative designed to place women in armored corps roles and evaluate their performance in demanding battlefield environments. Some religious Zionist rabbis expressed opposition, raising concerns about the challenges of male and female soldiers serving together in close operational settings. Zami emphasized that the military relies on the contributions of all qualified personnel, stating that both male and female fighters and commanders are vital to Israel's defense needs. He described the inclusion of women in significant military roles as strategically important, saying the move could provide additional strength and flexibility for the armed forces. The army leadership said it must consider the needs and beliefs of different segments of society while preserving unity, discipline, and effectiveness across its ranks. Zami stressed that the focus should remain on shared goals and cooperation, arguing that common purpose is the foundation for stronger teamwork among soldiers. He added that any expansion of women's combat roles will be carried out under existing military guidelines governing service between men and women. Officials said that any new combat assignments or units would continue to follow strict professional requirements, with training, readiness, and operational standards remaining a top priority. Threats from influential religious groups have reportedly forced Israel's military to modify its approach toward tank crews, exposing the difficult balance between manpower needs and religious sensitivities during a period of troop shortages. According to the Times of Israel, the Israeli military clarified that male and female soldiers will not serve together inside the same tank, seeking to address concerns raised by religious leaders over plans to integrate women into the armored corps. The IDF's response came after religious schools and rabbinical leaders objected to a pilot program that could allow female soldiers to serve in armored units, arguing that it conflicted with their religious principles. According to reports, 12 Hesder yeshivas threatened to stop sending their students to tank units if the military moved forward with plans that they believed would require male and female soldiers to serve together. In response, the Israeli military insisted that female tank crews would remain separate from male soldiers, while maintaining that the pilot program is intended to examine operational needs without compromising existing military standards. According to the Times of Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces said, and I quote, "After approximately 2.5 years of intense, multi-front and unprecedented war, during which the operational missions of the IDF were expanded, and the burden on the reserve forces increased significantly, the IDF needs every male and female combat soldier. As the People's Army, the IDF places the highest importance on integrating all populations, while making a great effort to preserve their way of life and needs, in a manner that does not harm one population at the expense of another." The High Court of Justice did not instruct the IDF to enlist female soldiers into the armored corps, but rather instructed it to conduct the planned pilot on the matter. A pilot, by definition, is an initial trial intended to examine the possibility of continuing the program. The pilot will be conducted in accordance with the military's protocols on men and women serving together, while ensuring compliance with all required operational and professional standards, and in accordance with operational needs. We have maintained continuous contact with the heads of Hesder yeshivas and their representatives, alongside other figures in the religious Zionist community, regarding this matter. Israel's High Court ordered the IDF to begin a pilot program for female soldiers in the armored corps by November, increasing pressure on the military to move forward with plans that had faced repeated delays. According to reports, the IDF came under growing legal and public pressure to launch the Women's Tank Corps pilot after postponing the initiative multiple times over concerns related to operational and organizational requirements. Despite the controversy surrounding the integration of women into armored units, The military reportedly planned to operate gender-segregated tank crews in an effort to address concerns raised by religious communities. Reports suggested that issues related to modesty and religious sensitivities were a major factor behind the decision to keep male and female tank crews separate during the pilot program. However, while men and women may not serve together inside the same tanks, reports indicated that they could still find themselves serving alongside one another at the battalion and brigade levels. After roughly 1,000 days of continuous war, Israel now fears that its system for treating wounded soldiers is at risk of collapse, overwhelmed by the scale of need. On July 2nd, officials reported that more than 26,200 wounded troops have applied for rehabilitation since October 7, 2023, a caseload far beyond what planners originally expected. The Defense Ministry has warned that, without urgent reforms and more resources, the rehabilitation system could buckle under pressure and simply fail those who need it most. Around 65% of all registered wounded are now being treated primarily for psychological conditions, rather than visible battlefield injuries. The ministry says post-traumatic stress, chronic anxiety, and depression remain the most common challenges, showing how deeply the war is affecting soldiers' minds. Officials estimate that roughly 17,000 of the wounded are coping with some form of psychological trauma, a number that continues to rise with every new operation. Of that group, about 7,700 soldiers are battling both physical wounds and serious psychological injuries, making their rehabilitation far more complex and costly. The Defense Ministry projects that the total number of wounded veterans in the system could exceed 90,000 during 2026, stretching clinics and staff to the limit. By 2028, that figure is expected to approach 100,000 wounded veterans, locking in a long-term burden that will last well beyond this conflict. Officials believe that nearly half of all future cases could involve significant psychological trauma, confirming that mental health will remain at the core of the crisis. A public committee examining the system has urged the government to allocate a much larger budget for the Rehabilitation Department to keep it functioning. The panel recommends appointing a dedicated case manager for every wounded service member, so no one gets lost in the bureaucracy or waits months for help. It also called for dramatically expanding access to psychological treatment across the system, arguing that early, sustained care is the only way to prevent a deeper mental health catastrophe.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.